Okay, so let's see if we're going to manage the second part. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I see there's two viewers. I don't know if there's, and now I have the normal stop broadcasting. This is so crazy. I don't know what they're doing. End of the job. He's hi. Yes, GPZ is here. Okay. Thunderous is on the Hangout, so that is working as well. So, okay, so it looks like we're working.
Hi.
Hi, you missed the beginning.
Yes, somebody linked it.
Because I wasn't sure, I'm talking to Thunderous now, I wasn't sure whether you're going to come because you weren't here in the beginning. So there you go. So I did this, what you did the last time with the Jehovah's Witnesses. I already finished that.
What, you threw a bucket of water over yourself?
Sorry,
what's that? Well, isn't that what you do with Jehovah's Witnesses? Throw a bucket of water over yourself? Or rather a bucket of water over them?
No, what I said was that we were talking about the existence of Jesus, and it just so happened that for this month, the Awake, which is talking about the evidence for Jesus' existence.
Habeas corpus. You've got no body, mate. You can't prove the existence of Jesus.
I suppose you could say the same thing about Charlemagne as well, then.
I mean, the only proof of Jesus that I could possibly guess at is that some of the letters of Paul have been attributed to another Christian who was going around exactly the same route Paul was alleged to have gone round. And if that guy knew Jesus, then there must have been a Jesus. But it's not firm proof, it's just like proof by association. Hearsay. But I find it rather odd. Why would some people invent a Jesus as a god?
No, you have to. Number one, it's based on the Jewish idea of a Messiah, where somebody needs to return to then liberate the Jews. But then what happened is that somebody then said, well, let's bring the Messiah, but the Jews didn't accept it. So they said, well, let's create our own version, sacrifice the guy so that he can then take on the sin that we are going to now take on from the Old Testament. And then what we do is we look at all the stories of the Old Testament and then say, okay, now they've all been terminated. And then they needed somebody to take the blame. This is why you have the scapegoat. This is why you have this function in Christianity. And that's the way. They just needed a figurehead. They needed somebody as a so-called Messiah.
But it's always been a fait accompli.
They all died in the first century for a lie.
Sorry, so the two of you were talking at the same time, and I didn't understand.
Okay, so sorry. So by implication, and what you're saying is the first century Christian stories, the historical records are all based on a lie. So people who claim to be Christian in the first century, that they died for a man that never existed then, yeah?
Correct. But they never died.
And your evidence for this is?
No, they're stories, because there is no evidence.
But what evidence is it that you want to prove Jesus did exist? What evidence are you expecting, if not a historical record?
Well, there are no historical records.
Well, the Bible would claim to be one, and
yeah, well, the Bible isn't. Because, no, if you take the Bible, you can't take the Bible as a historical record, because the Bible says that there were earthquakes. The Bible says there were zombies in Jerusalem. The Bible says X, Y, and Z, and none of these things have ever happened.
Yeah, but there's two types of parts of the Bible, isn't there? That you've got the letters and you've got the Gospels. Now, the letters are going to be closer to, shall we say, evidence than the fanciful stories of the Gospels.
Yeah, but hang on. You can't say that somebody says, well, I have a vision and there's this guy talking to me and I think this is Jesus. What is that? That's not evidence.
Well, that's just one letter, isn't it? But you had different people who they attributed to different shall we say, disciples. I mean, if you look at the, what do they call that book, Acts? I mean, in that, that's the story of how Paul eventually got killed, wasn't it? Executed. And that is somebody who was very close to the time of Jesus's lifespan, who actually died for something which you claim he couldn't have believed in. He actually stands against what you just said, that they died for nothing. He believed in something. He wasn't a made-up character.
How do you know this?
Well, he wasn't the only one, apparently, who was going around doing this sort of stuff.
Okay, yeah, but how do you know Jesus' lifespan?
Well, we know from the people who study the Bible, the New Testament, that they got various scraps of manuscripts and letters dating back to about 100 AD or earlier.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that Jesus existed.
No, it doesn't mean Jesus. There's no actual evidence of Jesus the person, but there is evidence of people who believed there was a Jesus the person.
And that is exactly the point that I'm making. Yes, there are people who believe this, but there is no real physical evidence for the physical existence of Jesus.
Well,
Is there some people who believe that that he actually ended up going to India?
No, that's the Ahmadiyyas.
No, I mean Christians. Because I've heard a number of Christians say they think that Jesus went to India.
Now, there's a sentence in the New Testament which says that while he was walking, then Simon took over the cross. Now, this passage in the Bible is then taken by some people, like for Muslims, who are saying, then it was Simon who got crucified. No, he just helped him along some part of the way. But some people now say, okay, but there's a mention of the guy Simon, there's a mention of this guy Simon taking part of the cross or taking a part of the way of the cross, and therefore Jesus quickly ran away, slipped away, or whatever. This is part of the story, but it doesn't mean that this was real. Yeah, exactly. So people are discussing the empty tomb and then saying, well, the tomb was empty, that means Jesus existed. No, it does not mean that Jesus existed. It just means that there's a story about an empty tomb. There's a story of a Jesus having been inside this tomb, and when the tomb was empty, well, maybe there were two angels or not. I mean, the Bible can't even tell you when Jesus went with this tomb story, whether it was daylight or whether it was still at night. They don't know whether it was closed or open. They don't know how many people were there. Come on.
You don't miss the point.
People take that story seriously, though. It's like there was a story that said, oh, you know what? Raven left London. And I'm not even in London. And then it's like, oh, people go to London. Is he there? Is he there? Is he there? He's not there.
So he must have left London.
What? That's
well,
ridiculous.
You've got the hair to be Jesus.
But you were saying, they can't decide this, they can't decide that. Are those points that you're suggesting they can't do the account? That's why they're not included in the account, because those parts of the narrative are not of any value.
Sorry, you dropped out and I could barely hear what you were saying. I don't know why. Did anybody understand that?
I'm asking questions.
No, he's dropping out far too much.
The points that you're raising that are not mentioned in the Bible.
They are in the Bible.
But the ones that spam's mentioned, are they not mentioned because they're not relevant?
No, they are in the Bible. They are. This is what the New Testament says.
You're saying they can't decide. They can't decide this. They can't decide that.
No, there are four different versions.
If you get the Bible, the New Testament, and you read the discovery of the tomb after the crucifixion in parallel, you read them both all three of them at the same time, you'll find they're all different. That's what he's saying.
Do you not think that they might be into parts of the account and pulling them together and have one complete.
No, there's nothing that makes them sound even remotely the same, like different witnesses from different angles. It's not like that at all. It's like completely different events. He dies at different days. He has a tomb that's has people in it. Has a tomb that has nobody.
I can't see any two different days. I see one day. I don't see two.
No, it's yeah. You need to go and look up somebody like Bart Ehrman. He's a biblical scholar.
I'm asking you, not Bart Ehrman.
Yeah, well, I'm saying he's the one who can actually go into more what do you call it, detail, because he studies the different. Well, he's a scientist. He's able to tell you why these things are different days. And I'm going to have to stop for a while because the dog's playing up badly.
Okay, the thing is that it says it was the day of the Passover and it was the day before of the Passover. So you need to read them. What I did in the video, I put the four next to each other. And I said, okay, the one says it was dusk. The other one says it was nighttime. The other one says the sun was coming up. The other one said and so on. And I put them next to each other. And that's what I did then to compare them. And I said, the one says tomb was open. The other one says tomb was closed. The other one says there were two people. The other one says there were four people. One says they were inside. The other says they were outside. So I put them next to each other and then compared each event, each description.
Where are you based on?
Sorry?
Where are you based? I mean, at this moment in time, geographically, where are you?
Europe.
In Europe, okay. Well, England, Europe, or some of the European locale?
I didn't hear that. Say again.
Okay, you're obviously not in England, are you? At this
No.
Moment? Okay, right. I'm in England. Your left to your right, and from my left to my right. If a bicycle passed in front of us, and I asked you, what direction were the wheels spinning? The likelihood is clockwise from your location, and I'll say clockwise from my location. Now, are both of us wrong?
No, you can't say it like that. If the one says it's day, the other one says it's night for the same location.
No, give me the dignity of finishing. If a bicycle passed in between us from your location and from your point of view, the bicycle went clockwise, and from my point of view, they're going clockwise. From the same account, you're giving two different accounts of the same incident, but they're not contradicting. A bicycle did go through, and we're giving an accurate description of the perspective of what we had at each time.
No, but this is a false analogy.
Well, it's not a false, it's a very real analogy. If you're watching an incident takes place, that's the whole point of having two or three witnesses, because you get the whole story by having two or three different accounts of the same incident. Because one has a
Thunderous. The analogy should be there's a bicycle in between us. Does it have one wheel or two wheel? And the one says it's got two wheels and the other says it's got one wheel. How do you account for that?
Okay, so the illustration failed on you then, yeah?
Yes, because it doesn't make sense. It's not a matter of perception.
Every human being I've got the point I was trying to make, with the exception of you. Is it because there's a prejudice of, if it makes sense with reference to defending the Bible, you're not going to go with it because it goes against your own narrative?
Okay, I didn't hear what you said there because you were cutting out.
Okay, it doesn't matter. What I said was completely irrelevant, I guess.
What you said was what?
Irrelevant.
Irrelevant. So if it was irrelevant,
I don't think I've said anything that's going to change, you know, your stand, or maybe make you see things a little bit differently from the perspective that I have. So I think it's futile. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, but then what is your perspective? Because I'm saying, give me the facts.
Yes, my perspective is Jesus was a real person. Now, I'm not necessarily saying I believe all the accounts. I'm not agreeing to all the accounts of what he did, but that he was a very real person. I mean, my date of birth is 1968, the Anno Domini, the year of the Lord. You can't base time on a man that doesn't exist.
Yes, you can. We are doing this.
It didn't exist. Okay, then that's fine. Well, that's amazing, you know. And I suppose Josephus and all these people got it wrong as well. You know, they're all writing about a man that never existed.
No, nobody is writing about the man.
Why have they lied about this one guy then, historically? Why is this the one guy people have commented on that you say did not exist?
No, nobody wrote about
Are you
him.
going to suggest then, right, Richard III didn't exist?
It doesn't matter. Richard III is not Jesus.
Well, what difference does it make to you?
Well, we are not basing our
difference
idea or anything on Richard. We're basing it on Jesus. Jesus is the one who started a religion. Jesus is the founder, the basis of the religion.
But what I don't understand is you've agreed about 10 minutes ago that people died for a man that never existed, yet they give eyewitness testimony.
There are no eyewitness testimonies.
Oh, so John didn't exist, Luke didn't exist, Matthew didn't exist.
Exactly.
The Apostle Paul didn't.
Hold it.
Exactly. Now you're getting it. Exactly.
Hold it. A lot of the people who you've just cited there didn't actually. The Gospels don't have any names. They weren't written by anybody we know. The church gave them the names of the saints because they were untitled. They didn't have authors, so they just said, "Oh, we'll call this one written by Luke, and we'll call this one written by John."
According to,
because they looked at it as it was quite okay in those days to write a book and then say it's written in the style of John, so we'll say it's written by John. That was common practice.
But it's very easy. Just give me a fact. Because Thunderous, you just said we have all these people writing about Jesus. No, they did not. Like I said, Tacitus never once mentions Jesus. Josephus mentions Jesus 69 times, but never the Jesus that you're talking about.
And it's not even true, if they don't even believe, some people, that it was actually even written by Josephus. It could have been just lines.
So Josephus wasn't written by Josephus now?
No. The TF.
No, please. There are people, scientists, who study these things, who say they no longer trust the Josephus text because it's not written in the style of Josephus. They don't think it was written by him.
No, GP, sorry, I need to correct you on this one. They're not talking about the annals. They are not talking about the whole text of Josephus.
They're just talking about
Testimonium Flavianum.
They think it was written by a Christian scribe, just to add sort of like a bit of history in the subnote.
GP, are you talking about the paragraph, the one paragraph, or his 15 books?
I'm talking about the one paragraph.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that it wasn't clear. That they thought that Josephus wrote his books, but a Christian scribe during the retranslations, when they were copying books. Sorry, bloody.
That's why I said the Jehovah Witnesses don't even mention this anymore because everybody knows it's a fake. So nobody actually wrote about the Jesus that, well, I don't know why Thunderous believes that he existed. Nobody writes about him except the four Gospels and, of course, Paul. But then it's just the New Testament.
What did you do at Jehovah's Witnesses? Because I've got family that are Jehovah's Witnesses, so I speak to them on a regular basis. So can you inform me, what do they not believe about Jesus?
They don't mention in this edition of Awake the Testimonium Flavianum.
Okay. They don't. So say that again. I'm trying to comprehend what you're saying.
What Christians normally say is that the evidence in this one account of Josephus, the most damning one, is the one where he says, "And it came at this time that there was a man, if you can call him a man, who was Jesus, who was crucified, and he was the bestest," and da-da-da-da. This one paragraph.
And you're saying
the so-called TF.
And you're saying Jehovah's Witnesses do not quote Josephus anymore?
No, I'm saying they do not quote this one paragraph.
How do you know that? Do you have friends like Jehovah's Witnesses too?
You told me to go and look at Jehovah's Witnesses Awake, which I did, which in the beginning of the show, I showed what the Jehovah's Witnesses pamphlet that you were referring to, what it said.
Oh, so that makes sense as to why you said I missed the beginning. Fair enough.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, then I'm coming in at it halfway through, and I've obviously missed the first part.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough then.
All right. So we've settled now. Jesus, there is no evidence. Nobody writes about him except people in the New Testament. Okay, because nobody else ever mentions the Jesus as described in the New Testament. That's that. The same goes for Moses. The same goes for Muhammad. Nobody writes about the Moses as is mentioned in the Old Testament. Nobody writes about Muhammad as is mentioned in the Sunnah. There's nothing in the Quran anyway, so you have to go to the Sunnah, and nothing that is written in the Sunnah has ever been corroborated through anybody outside. So this is where we are at the moment. These guys were brought in as figureheads for their respective gods, because the gods need somebody on earth who says, listen guys, you can do it. This is the test I'm giving you, and you can do it. And here's the guy who's doing exactly what I want you to do, and he can do it. And he's the one who's going to teach you.
But this was usually always done as a fait accompli. That's what I was trying to say earlier. If you look at all the other great leaders who didn't have a religious sort of mandate to go and do and conquer, they made it up. I mean, it happened before Muhammad and Jesus with various Zoroastrian kings. But when you got Jesus, there isn't a fait accompli there. This stuff, some of this stuff is written before Christianity becomes actually popular.
Yeah, and there's other indications.
I mean, it's weird. It's very weird in the way that it is a sort of like, it's like a little cult that started up and it hit the big time for some reason, but many decades after it should have fizzled out.
Yeah.
And with Islam, it's like there was this mad murderer running through stealing from all the villages, and then they couldn't explain how Abu Bakr managed to conquer half of the Middle East. So they had to invent this sort of like prophet giving him divine backing from God to conquer everybody and make them slaves.
Can I talk on this point a little bit? Because it is even with Abu Bakr and Uthman and Umar and Ali, there is no good historical sayings or writings about those persons at all.
You mean they might not have existed?
Correct.
Yes, because the first the first more authentic texts in history about Muslims and Arabs, etc., are the Umayyads.
Muawiyah.
Yeah, he was an Umayyad, and he is to fight against some other guys in mostly Iraq, in Kufa, etc. And why you can take it more serious that Muawiyah existed is because the Byzantines talk about him and with him, and the same goes for the Egypt. They talk to him and with him and trade with him or fight with him, etc. And on the side of the four rightness guided caliph, there is no real historic records beside the internal Islamic traditions, so to say. So even these four persons are probably just fabricated to make an opposite against Muawiyah himself.
Yeah, but if someone's taking a large chunk of sort of your empire as the Byzantines, there's got to be some kind of evidence that something's going on, even if you don't know the name of the war.
Yeah, sure, something's going on, but the claims are in the Islamic traditions that these persons were there. So that's the point. I mean, it's like if you look at the Second World War, and people tell you where there was a guy, some Swiss guy, and he killed like over 30 million Egyptians or Mauritanians or something like that. So the story is founded in a way real, because it was happening something in the Second World War, but the facts are completely just fabricated, so to say.
If his name was Chuck Norris, I can believe it.
Yeah, the
Well,
point
so
is,
when you say that, do you mean like it has a basis, but like there was a Second World War, but instead of the factual thing, which was like 12 million died and by an Austrian, it just expanded to 30 million, and they went from an Austrian to a Swede, or am I misunderstanding?
yeah, something like that. Something like that. It is just to claim some divine right for land or for power or something like that, and to fabricate like a history of their own nation, etc. So it's easy to say Ali was there, but Ali and Muawiyah never met themselves. So just Muawiyah was just told there is a guy in Kufa mostly, and he wants to fight you. And Muawiyah never really was going to war himself. He just sent his generals, and his generals didn't knew. And Ali just heard about him, because Ali also wasn't real on the field, but was to be claimed as a leader of an opposite.
Just on that note about how stories change and expand and evolve, it used to be believed that before humans came, that Britain was an island inhabited by giants. And believe it or not, there's actually the Old Testament figures of Gog and Magog.
Yeah.
There's actually some relation to UK legend. In fact, there are some people who actually think that Gog and Magog, or some variation of them, are currently chained underneath London.
Well, look at some of these other myths.
Look at how it stretches. Like the oldest reference I've ever found to Gog and Magog, the figures in the Old Testament, actually comes from a Roman centurion by the name of Brutus, who came over to the UK with the Roman Empire, and it was claimed that he actually fought against two giant brothers, against Gog and Magog, and after he had this victory against them, actually went back to the Middle Eastern area, and it's fascinating to think of a possible connection between mythologies.
I am the most famous general because I fought the Gog and the Magog. So everybody then this yeah, of course, and then this embellishes the story. I mean, just think of Napoleon. The British came up with this meme. Napoleon is small. He has small hands and a small penis. So everybody thought Napoleon was tiny, and it wasn't. So yeah. Okay, so it's very difficult to establish anything that happened in those days before the 8th, 9th, 10th century, because we don't have those records from that era in that region. In other areas, it's better documented, in others it's not. But we don't have so many documents of Alexander the Great, but we have corroborating evidence, because we have coins, we have inscriptions, we have tales, we have all sorts of pieces, which all then lead to a picture of this man Alexander, which we don't have for other figures. So it's very difficult to establish what happened on the Arabian Peninsula during the 7th and 8th century.
It's amazing how many people cannot actually grasp this simple fact, though. It never ceases to baffle me.
Yeah, I don't know.
The way that I tried to explain it to someone,
give another example, just
Muslim lad I was talking to, and I was talking about corroboration and how you know things. And the example I used, imagine like 3,000 years ago in ancient Greece, there was an astronomer who claimed, who wrote down that he was looking up at the night sky, doing his old astronomy thing, and he witnessed a particular event. Now, we know that it was around this year, around this time, and this is what he's describing in the event. Now let's imagine that we find records of a Japanese astronomer from the same time who actually wrote to seeing an event that seems to be the same as what this ancient Greek is saying. Two people, different parts of the world, no relation to each other, no way that they could conspire together, and yet they're making the same claim. Now, if it was just one of them, it's just meaningless. But when you have two different sources, I just use that as a very basic example to say, it gives it like a little bit more credence. But even then, that doesn't mean it's real. It could be a coincidence. It could be, you don't know. But when you have different sources saying similar things, that's the point you've got to stop and wonder.
Exactly. Okay, the example, Mr. Dancing Bombhead.
Dancing Muhammad. Just a little small example how in the field of religion can change things. Crete, the island of Greek, where Zeus was born in the old mythology. Zeus was born in Crete, and it was long time just for the people there a fact that Zeus was born there, and the mother of God was worshipped there, especially more than on other places in Greek. And as Jesus came along, suddenly, not suddenly, but over the time, the mother of God was Mary, just to change it, and the son of God was Zeus, and it changed to the son of God, the Jesus figure. And today, more people worshipped on this island in Crete that the mother of God more than the God himself. So it just shows how people deceive themselves. Even they know the story why the island was claimed to be the birthplace of Zeus. Now it is the birthplace of at least the more worship place of the mother of God. So
you're saying that the people believe that Jesus was born in Crete, or that Mary?
Not particularly born that, but the mother God, the mother of God figure is Mary, and it just changed from Maria, the mother of Zeus, to Mary, and Zeus himself is not important at all. Jesus is more important.
Okay, Maria was not the mother of Zeus.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the whole point. The myth was changed from Rhea and Zeus, meaning the mother of God, of the highest God, to Mary and Jesus.
I think the parallel that Ike is trying to show.
I don't parallel. I mean, the story of Zeus is his mother had to hide him because his father, Kronos, the Titan,
that doesn't matter.
Was going to, because Kronos had discovered a prophecy saying his own children would overthrow him. Yeah, so every time he had a child, ate them, swallowed them whole.
Yeah, Raven, that's not the point. The point is,
I don't really see
the mythology was changed from Rhea and Zeus to Mary and Jesus. That's the point.
So the parallel is the fact that you have a mother giving birth to a god without any known father.
Well, well, no, because Kronos was a father of Zeus.
Oh, then I got it wrong.
No,
I got the parallel wrong.
How is it, why is that so hard to understand? The mythology was
because it has nothing to do with each other. I mean, you'd be a lot. I mean, if you were to actually talk about like Osiris or Krishna or whatever, that'd be
Raven. It is not about facts. That's the point. It's not about. It's about just stories being changed to fit the thoughts and in the time of the people they're living. And the thoughts are that it was a time it came around this Jesus figure, and suddenly, so to say, the figures, the old figures, were just expelled of the thoughts, and new figures came into being, and still the mother of God is more important than the God himself. So it just changed the figure. That's the point. The story is just without any reason at all.
Can I say it's, for Raven, it's a bit like Christmas. You know that Christmas was an old pagan celebration, yes?
Yeah, Yule.
Well, imagine, you know that the Christians co-opted Christmas so as to override the pagan beliefs and to get pagans to join them.
Yeah, it's also why...
what he's talking about is very much the same. The religious church co-opted Mary as a sort of like god figure, or goddess, because there were pagans, the Greeks and the Romans, who believed in that sort of shit. And it was some way to get them to accept the religion, a bit like those satanic verses of Muhammad. By making ties to the old religions, you were able to get them to follow your same God.
Okay, the other parallel that we have, or something that is actually quite different, is that Jesus in Islam is the son of Mary, who is the sister of Moses.
Mary, wasn't she... who is her sister who gave birth to John the Baptist?
I don't know. I just know that it says in the Quran that Maria is the sister of Aaron, and since Aaron is the brother of Moses, Maria must have been the sister of Moses, and if Jesus was born by the sister of Moses, there must be a time difference of 1,000 years.
Well,
so there's two different possibilities here. Either they made a mistake in thinking that Mary, the mother of Moses, was the same Mary as the Mary who gave birth to Jesus, or they thought that Jesus was born 1,000 years earlier.
No.
Okay. But
wait, isn't Mary in the Quran? Isn't she called Mariam? Not what you said.
Miriam.
Or
Mariam or whatever. Yeah, but that's too. What's the difference?
Yeah, no. Sorry, that was my mistake. I just realised you said the same thing. It was just a different pronunciation.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. The other thing is we've got a question in the chat which I find quite interesting, and that is a typical question that we should be getting on the Jinn&Tonic Show. Why is it that people need, take, accept, want to have hadiths, these sayings, or the sunnah in general? And this is a very, very good point, because in Islam, if you look at history, we don't know when the Quran came around. So first you had the stories, then you had what today is known as the second chapter, which is the cow, and this was the basis of a religion, of a god worship. Then this was changed to be incorporated in a book where they took different stories by different authors, put them together, and this was the Quran. Then they realized that the Quran didn't actually explain anything. It didn't tell you how to worship. It didn't tell you all the details that you needed to know. So they had to come up with a Muhammad who then interpreted what the God said, inspired by this God, the God talking through Muhammad to tell the people what they had to do. And this is why in the Quran it says then obey the Prophet, obey the messengers, but it doesn't say obey Muhammad. So Muhammad could be a title, in other words, the praised one or the praiseworthy one. So obey whoever is praiseworthy, because he might be talking, a God might be talking through him. And this is the whole history. So then they started making stories out of this. So you had entire madrasas writing hadiths. So at the end of the day, there is talk of 400,000 hadiths, which were then simply chucked out until you've come down to something more manageable, like 50,000 or 20,000, what we have today. But even today, we do not know how many hadiths we really have. So they limited it once again, and they said, well, we have the 6 authentic ones, and even those are between 15 and 20,000, and nobody knows how many. So we have stories about something which is supposed to explain the Quran, but it doesn't. And this is why I've got the Hadith of the week, which will show exactly that. So we don't know why it is that people have the Sunnah and they rely so heavily on this. And this is why some people say, no, we don't need it, we don't want it, Quran is enough. Quran says it's complete, Quran says that's all you need, and that is what we're taking.
It's also worth pointing out when it comes to hadith that quite a number of them were seemingly created for the sole purpose of Islamic expansion. I mean, keep in mind, Islam started as basically an Arab religion. And it was when it began to expand and when it tried to get converts from non-Arabs that around specific times you seem to get specific hadiths. I mean, just one example, the whole praying 5 times a day hadith. I'm not sure who asked the question, but in the Zoroastrian religion, you actually pray 5 times a day. And by an amazing coincidence, just when you get to a point where the fledgling Arab empire is starting to expand into Zoroastrian territory, all of a sudden, at the exact same time, you've now got hadiths saying, oh no, it's the same in our religion. Our religion also says pray 5 times a day. So you can kind of see a vein of co-opting and things like that. Also, if you look at specific dates of hadiths, at least as far as you can, you see them being created to justify laws and things like that. So it's just imagine, you know how in today's world the legal process changes every now and then. What basically happened in Islam, at least with the hadiths, is that the law was made up for a very short time, and then the door was slammed shut. It was codified. Okay, we've got everything we need, everything that we ever will need, and that was when it became unchanging.
Yeah, but then the hadiths are actually the reason why today you have all these different groupings in Islam. That's why you don't have a Muslim and the Islam. That's why you have all these different versions of the people. That's why you have the Ahmadiyya. That's why you have all the different flavors in Islam. I mean, look at the Shia. They have different texts. And the thing is, the Quran doesn't tell you how to pray. It doesn't tell you how many times to pray. It doesn't tell you when to pray, because it just mentions prayer, and it mentions something in the morning and the evening and in between, but nothing detailed. It tells you that you need to pay zakat, but it doesn't tell you how much based on what. So people then went and said, well, you need to pay this much based on this and blah, blah, blah. So it's the people who made this up. And this is then called the hadith, which is then the sayings or the traditions of Muhammad. And that's all it is.
Wasn't there a caliph that, I think it was Uthman, there was this bloke in his court that apparently kept on coming out with more and more hadiths, which were frustrating the caliph. So he actually made it illegal for him to say any more hadiths.
I can't remember that. But there are so many hadiths saying how people came up with something where Muhammad was writing down, somebody was writing down something, and then somebody sitting next to him, he was the best of the creators. He says, oh, that's a nice sentence. I'm going to put that into the Quran. So this is the way that it worked. I mean, it's a sham. It's a ripoff.
One thing I found peculiar when I was brought up as a Muslim was that if you add up all the hadith, which are thousands, and from my understanding, I stand to be corrected, but I always presumed that most of his revelations came after Khadija died. So you had a period of probably about 22 years from the prophethood of when he became, or when the revelation started to come in thick and fast, to when he died, about 22 years. Now, if you add up all the hadith and you sort of take, say, well, the average out, well, maybe for every hadith that he received, and then you multiply that by the hadith, so a minute, 6,000 either 6,000 minutes, or maybe more in some cases. And then you subtract that from, say, the amount of time he would have taken to sleep, the amount of time that he went to war, the amount of sex he had with his 9 wives, was find the time to have all these hadith written for him. Surely his lifespan would have been longer than it is recorded to have done, to accomplish as much as what he's done.
That's a very good point.
Does that make sense what I'm trying to say there?
It's true. And I've tried arguing this point, but you never get an answer. It's absolutely nothing.
So you understand that?
What was that?
So you understand where I'm coming from. When you take away the sex of the 9...
Yes.
And,
how many minutes does it take to come up with a hadith? How many minutes was he awake? And then if you do the maths, it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly, yes. So I thought I was going mad for a moment. I thought I was the only person that never conceived the idea.
Oh yeah, of course.
I'm glad I realised that. So.
I think this is brilliant. This is so logical, okay? But the point is, people will not accept it. They will come up with something. He can have said this to different people at different times very quickly, and how quickly can you speak? And they picked this up, and different people picked up different things. But then you have the Dutch guy who did a study on this and found out that 80% of all hadiths come through one guy. So you have a bottleneck there of one guy doing 80% of all the hadiths. So how much time could this guy then have listened to Muhammad saying all these things and then writing them down or narrating them to others until they ended up in Bukhari? It's crazy.
Oh yeah, because then you got to add another 2 weeks as well, haven't you? From when the Dhul Qurnayn, when he got the questions, and it took 2 weeks for him to give the answer. That's because he didn't say inshallah. Do you remember that?
Yes.
There's another 2 weeks.
You see, it's your own fault. You should have said inshallah. If you say inshallah, then it works. If not, well, tough shit. So yeah. Okay, now I was hoping that Alassa was going to be here today to talk about Ashura, but he's not. So is there any other topic that we need to talk about, can talk about, should talk about, might talk about?
I thought you were going to ask people to do a hadith for you, a hadith of the day.
Well, this was Alassa who was supposed to do that, but I got one just in case, and it's just as well, because he's not here today. So I got a hadith, which I always do at the end. Because if there's nothing else that we need to talk about, then just cut it short and I'll do the hadith of the week and that's it.
Well, I had a few subjects.
I was going to mention something.
Sorry, you're cutting out again.
So I was going to mention something because I did have a hadith kind of prepared and relative questions at family when I'm talking to them about why I left Islam. Did you hear me?
Yeah. Barely. Something about when I left Islam.
Yeah, I do have a hadith ready for you.
Okay. Then we do that at the end. Okay, no, you're welcome. Absolutely. Because I've got a question here. When it comes to evolution, why do these mullahs keep parroting it is only a theory? Is it hard to get across the... Yes. Yeah. There's I mean, what you find is that Muslim apologists copy, I would estimate around 90% of their stuff from Christians. There's very little that is original. And Christians come up with this idea, well, there is no fact of evolution, it's just a theory, and therefore, once it becomes a fact of evolution, then come talk to me. Until then, leave me alone with it. Until then, it's just a theory. It's just something that people think might have come up with during a coffee break or something like that. So that's where it comes. So you can't come with facts.
I mean, one thing to point out is these people are not scientists. They don't understand the scientific process. So they don't even know what a theory is in the context of science, let alone an established scientific theory. Another thing is that they feel it's a threat to their religion. The way that they look at it is the Quran says this and science says that. If science says something different to the Quran, that means science is wrong, because obviously the Quran is the word of Allah. I mean, it really does depend on the type of person you're talking to. Some people are taught in such a literalist idea of Adam and Eve that it has to be true just as the Quran says it. Now, Muslims who look at the evidence and accept it do one of two things. Number one, they apostate because it just, the Quran says this and it turns out the Quran is wrong, or they change their own personal view and they manage to get this idea of theistic evolution where, okay, evolution happened, but it was guided by God. There's actually a fantastic sermon, a khutbah, that you might want to check out. It's called, just go onto Google, type in agnostic Muslim Adam and Eve, and it gives this really interesting alternate idea where the Qur'an is still true, but it meant it in a metaphorical way. And it's well worth checking out.
Yeah, and somebody's just stolen this. Well, he beat me to it because I was going to say, brother makes a good point there.
I mean, the Catholics managed to do it, didn't they? You know, they still believe in the Bible. They've still got, you know, all the power of the church, but yet they accept evolution. They just say, Adam and Eve, it's metaphorical, a way for us to understand our relationship with God and our purpose for being here. And of course, it's not literal, but the Bible's still true.
Well, this is something that caught me unawares because I learned that the female form is the basic form of humans. And I thought,
Yeah.
no, come
We
on,
all
that
start
can't
out,
be.
you know.
Yeah, but this is something that caught me unawares because I could not imagine that the Bible could be this wrong. Because you learn this in school, obviously, and I was still under the influence of the Bible at the time. And then I thought, how is that possible? And then I looked it up and I checked it. Yes, it was true. And this is also something where I thought, bloody hell, you know, they will lie about everything. So the Bible, and I'm talking about the Bible, all right? The Bible will lie about everything, making it look as though Adam was the first one, when in reality, it's Eve. It's the other way around. Eve was the first one to be created, and then Adam is created from Eve. So, you know, it's amazing how, I mean, in the Quran, it doesn't say that. The Quran is so vague, it doesn't even get Adam and Eve right. It talks about Adam, who was created from dust, and that is it. And then the two souls matched each other and blah, blah. But it doesn't ever mention Adam and Eve because there's no woman mentioned in the entire Quran except for Mary.
But yeah, the very interesting thing about Adam and Eve thing, particularly Eve coming from Adam's rib, is if you actually look into the history of that story and where that happened, and then you know, you look at the story of Adam and Lilith, and you see how the story of Lilith influences the coming of Eve.
Yeah,
and you know, definitely how that plays into you know, patriarchy and misogyny, which you find in the Abrahamic faiths.
yeah, but then
That has to be true, just as the Quran says it. Now, Muslims who look at the evidence and accept it do one of two things. Number one, they apostate because it just, you know, the Quran says this and it turns out the Quran is wrong, or they change their own personal view and they manage to get this idea of theistic evolution where, okay, evolution happened, but it was guided by God. There's actually a fantastic sermon, a khutbah, that you might want to check out. It's called just go onto Google, type in agnostic Muslim khutbah Adam and Eve, and it gives this really interesting alternate idea where the Quran is still true, but it meant it in a metaphorical way, and it's well worth checking out.
yeah, and somebody's just stolen this. Well, he beat me to it because I was going to say, brother makes a good point there.
I mean, the Catholics managed to do it, didn't they? You know, they still believe in the Bible. They've still got, you know, all the power of the church, but yet they accept evolution. They just say, Adam and Eve, it's metaphorical, a way for us to understand our relationship with God and our purpose for being here. And of course, it's not literal, but the Bible's still true.
Well, this is something that caught me unawares because I learned that the female form is the basic form of humans. And I thought,
Yeah.
no, come
We
on,
all
that
start
can't
out,
be.
you know.
Yeah, but this is something that caught me unawares because I could not imagine that the Bible could be this wrong. Because you learn this in school, obviously, and I was still under the influence of the Bible at the time. And then I thought, how is that possible? And then I looked it up and I checked it. Yes, it was true. And this is also something where I thought, bloody hell, you know, they will lie about everything. So the Bible, and I'm talking about the Bible, all right? The Bible will lie about everything, making it look as though Adam was the first one, when in reality, it's Eve. It's the other way around. Eve was the first one to be created, and then Adam is created from Eve. So, you know, it's amazing how, I mean, in the Quran, it doesn't say that. The Quran is so vague, it doesn't even get Adam and Eve right. it talks about Adam, who was created from dust, and that is it. And then the two souls matched each other and blah, blah. But it doesn't ever mention Adam and Eve, because there's no woman mentioned in the entire Quran except for Mary.
But yeah, the very interesting thing about Adam and Eve thing, particularly Eve coming from Adam's rib, is if you actually look into the history of that story and where that happened, and then you know, you look at the story of Adam and Lilith, and you see how the story of Lilith influences the coming of Eve.
Yeah.
And you know, definitely how that plays into you know, patriarchy and misogyny, which you find in the Abrahamic faiths.
Yeah, but then I don't know
if anyone is actually aware of the story of Lilith and how that relates to Eve. People know
I think every Christian must be.
Yeah.
Because it's in the Old Testament.
No. Lilith isn't in the Old Testament. This was, I think she was in the Talmud.
But it's mentioned there.
No.
I've never actually heard of Lilith mentioned in the Old Testament. And I know she isn't mentioned in Islam either. I've only ever seen one Islamic mention of Lilith. And that was in this book of Islamic demonology, which I think was written about 500 years ago. It's one brief mention of Lilith.
So where did I read about it then?
You've probably been.
No, I'm fairly certain that Lilith is not in the Bible.
It's not.
Oh, I thought it was in the Old Testament. I thought it was right in the beginning, where it says...
No. The Old Testament completely omits the story of Lilith, probably because they were worried about female rebellion.
Interesting. Then I don't know where I picked this up.
She got kicked out of being his
so
partner
do people know the story
of him.
I've read it, yeah, sure. But I don't know where. Now I thought it was in the Old Testament.
No. I'm just wondering if I should tell the story, because you like, I mean, obviously, I'm imagining that a lot of the
viewers... It has nothing to do with Islam.
I wanted to point out that it's quite obvious, really, that Eve came first, because it explains that age-old mystery of why do men have nipples.
Yeah. Okay, is there anything on Islam that we can talk about?
We have to keep in mind, this is a book that says fish smell the way they do, because Lilith, because Eve bathed herself in the water, and then made all the fish smell like that. So we've got to keep in mind the book we're talking about.
But I'm sure that there is some place in mythology, in Greek mythology, where you will find a parallel, where you will find exactly this, that a woman was fashioned out of something from the man, and this is then repeated in the Quran, in the Bible.
In Greek myth, men and women were fashioned by different gods. In Greek myth, Pandora was the first woman, and she was actually fashioned by the Titan. What was his name? Was it Prometheus? And this was actually, she was actually fashioned on the orders of Zeus. And then, of course, what the gods had previously done is that they'd taken all the evils of the world, like they'd taken evil, they'd taken sickness, they'd taken death, and they'd put it and locked it away into a box. And you know, no one was supposed to open it, but Pandora got curious. So she opened the box, and because of Pandora, evil was unleashed into the world, which is why we have suffering, sickness, and death on the world.
Okay, because I heard of
anyone that wants to, any viewers who want to look this up, just Google Pandora's box. You'll find it easy.
Okay, but you've never heard of a myth about the creation of men and women, one out of the other?
No, I mean, it was what was it? Prometheus. It was you know that Titan that brought fire to Earth, and then Zeus got pissed off, and he punished him by having to eternally roll the rock up a hill.
That's why Jesus was crucified. Prometheus also brought the enlightenment to the humans, and the fire.
Yeah, it was Prometheus.
It was Prometheus, but that's just one line in the Greek mythology.
Yeah, because I mean, Zeus for some reason
constant
decided to the world into darkness.
It's about there are two separate lines, more or less you can say. The theogony of Hesidios is one line of the Greek mythology, and the other is more or less by Umar in Ilias, to taken out where the gods came from, etc. So it is not so easy. It is mythology. It is not something like facts. It is saying and telling from people to people.
Well, I mean, in ancient Greece, the gods came out of chaos. You know, it was a primordial chaos, and then you had You had who was it? Uranus and Gaia, who came out of that primordial chaos. They were born out of the fires of creation. And then when the new gods came and overthrew the Titans, they brought order, which is why a lot of the gods, I mean, Zeus, for example, what is his attributes as a god? You know, law and justice and things like that. I mean, they're actually sort of symbolic of the idea of man conquering nature.
Okay, that was it. No parallels in mythology, because I'm always amazed at how many things you find in ancient texts, ancient manuscripts, ancient tablets, ancient whatever, where, you know, which is being copied everywhere.
I mean, as far as
originally from Australia,
these myths are fairly common.
I was just going to say, it's only the Australian Aborigines that have this. Is it the sea mother who brings the man and the woman to shore of Australia in the boats? That's the only sort of like similarity, both at the same time sort of myth.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one of the things that's very different to the idea of the Abrahamic faiths would be more Far Eastern ones and Australian ones. I mean, the Aborigine religion isn't fixed like Abrahamics. You know, the biggest part of their mythology is the dream time, and the dream time encompasses the past, the present, and the future. So, you know, the mythology changes; it's in flux. And then you have religions like Taoism, where they actually teach that the heavens are in a constant state of flux and evolution.
I wonder why the Muslims have never built an ark in Mecca.
An ark?
Yeah, because I just saw that Kim Ham here in the chat, and he's going apeshit with his ark. Oh shit! The stream is breaking up. I see the rotating. Oh, so YouTube seems to be under stress, like I said, and building this ark in Kentucky, and making a huge big loss for the thingamajig for the state. So I was wondering whether Muslims do anything else from the Quran, if they're going to build anything else other than the grave of Muhammad, which they want to stop now, and the cave and things like that.
They couldn't do.
I'm still wondering if it was Muslims that have built this mini Kaaba in Kenya.
It was Muslims, but I'm thinking.
It was.
They couldn't do that. They'd have to have My Little, not ponies. What do you call them? Little headless.
You just said My Little Pony.
Yeah, they'd have to have them, wouldn't they? They'd have to do an industry of making these little plushies of barats. Barats, wouldn't they?
Mm.
Little wing things. They could do one like Troy, couldn't they? They could have lots of jihadis inside of them and smuggle it into.
Right. You'd want a really cool one. I mean, borrowing again from Greek myth, get Pegasus.
Well, it looks like Pegasus, but it's got the face of Donald Trump.
You guys are evil. Okay, that the Gulf of Mexico hasn't filled up with sediment from the Mississippi River is proof that Earth is less than 10,000 years old. Yeah, it must be. All right, then if there's nothing else, let's call it a day for today. Then
there were a few things that I wanted to mention. Well, one of the things relates to your topic when you were going on about the idea of whether or not Aisha was married at 6 and molested at 9
17 or whatever, yeah.
And how Muslims want to sort of go against that. I mean, realistically, is that only in like certain contexts? I mean, it was only just recently that Bangladesh actually changed the law to make it legal to fuck a 9-year-old. Just a few months ago, Pakistan, the Pakistani government actually tried to get a law where I think the legal age of marriage was 18, and then the clergy just came running out the woodwork, Qur'an in one hand, Hadith in the other. And I mean, fucking Saudi Arabia doesn't even have an age of consent limit. I mean, I only really hear it from either from Westerners or from like more educated Muslims in the Islamic world who actually do have enough sense to understand, at least basically, the biology and mind state of a child. So I'm not really 100% sure on that. But I mean, this actually follows in with something else I wanted to say. Because I don't really think we care. Like, there's just been a report that's recently come out where this women's group, the Southall Black Sisters, and they've done this damning report about how British Sharia courts, today, are protecting wife-beating suspects and sabotaging criminal proceedings. So I'm not sure I really get behind the all Muslims, majority are ashamed of it or whatever.
Absolutely. Come on, they realize there's something wrong. That's why they're so desperate in trying to make her older than what she was. That's why you have all these stories. Well, she was at this event and blah, 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 so she must be around about 17 or something like this. They're desperately trying to get this out of this 6-year-old bracket.
Well, so, I'm wondering whether now she was only brought into the Hadith to tie Abu Bakr into the Muhammad myth. They wanted to have him in the myth, part of the line of progression, and the only way they could do it was to make his daughter marry someone, but his daughter happened to be sick, so they had a problem.
Yeah, but he didn't want this in the beginning.
Yeah, well, that.
Yeah, I mean, her father.
How many times do you hear prime ministers saying, "I don't want to be prime minister"? Oh no, I don't want to be in charge of the country. And then they get offered the opportunity, and they can't wait.
And then as soon as you actually get this same person trying to associate with the average person, one of them touched me.
Yeah.
A riffraff, the great unwashed masters.
Yeah. Okay, just when we're at the end, Rob shows up like last week. Rob, what have you got news? What did you do today?
Hey guys, yeah, came back. Just got back from Speaker's Corner now. So I wasn't as busy today, and obviously it gets dark very quickly, so home a bit earlier. But I had a long conversation with Muhammad, the tall Muslim guy,
the gay guy.
Yeah, the one that you say is gay.
The one who is gay but who doesn't know it yet.
Well, possibly. I mean, I'm not asked him. Maybe I'll ask him on your behalf and see what he says. I'm sure he will deny that. But if there's any philosophers or people here that have sort of philosophical knowledge, I'd be interested in your comments. Do premises have to follow each other logically in order for the conclusion to be valid? Or is the conclusion valid as long as the premises all add up to the conclusion? If I've stated that correctly.
Okay, as far as I know, premises can add up irrespective of one another. That's what I have heard, okay?
Okay, because Muhammad objected to my syllogism, basically saying that he felt the premises didn't follow each other, and obviously used the Socrates, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal, as an attempt to show that the premises must follow each other. Seriously? In other words, one premises must lead to the next one, to the next one, and then you have a conclusion. And I obviously don't know that, whether that's true.
Well, I mean, my immediate response to that would be, Socrates was a man, but not all men are Socrates. It's a very easy reply.
No, but the thing is, do they need to follow each other? Do they need to build up on one another? And as far as I know, no, they don't. They usually do, but they don't have to, as long as they're true within themselves.
It also depends on what the person means when they're coming by it. If they're trying everything they can to make the premise fit the conclusion, then it would be very valid to ask if you're just trying to make reality fit into your idea, as opposed to accepting reality even if it goes against your idea.
Okay. Because I put these three premises and conclusion to Muhammad, and obviously I wanted to be as charitable as possible. By the way, here's something for yourself, Stops. When my first premise is, before the universe, God was all there was. He challenged this immediately and said, no. Before the universe, God created other things. Apparently, he created or some scholars, according to him, created a pen and a tablet and a tawud. something like that, and then something else. So there was some other creational items before the universe. Is this something that you're aware of?
Well,
I'm just trying to imagine the Big Bang happening and a pen and paper flying out of it.
No. These were conceptual ideas, or these were some kind of physical things that apparently Allah created before the universe. So there was God, then there was these other things, which I'd never heard of before. Most Muslims just accept that God was all there was. But Muhammad insisted that there were these other things, including some kind of a, let's call it, not a metaphorical pen, but some kind of pen in God's universe, I guess.
Well, so is he trying to say that the Quran is eternal and the Quran has existed before creation?
Yes. This is the whole point.
The Quran is uncreated.
This is what it comes down to. You need the tablets, you need the gold, you need the hammer, you need the chisel. So these things must have existed before, plus the water.
And we were talking pen because when Allah said to it to write, it wrote. It was actually an animate pen. It could walk, it could talk, and it could write. Because when Allah said wrote, it had ears.
Sorry, V, was that a pen that Allah created, or where's that pen?
He wrote a pen, and when Allah said write, the pen wrote.
No, he thought of a pen. He thought a pen into existence.
Muhammad or Gabriel?
No, God. The thing is that God must have created things before he created the universe, because there were always angels. And this is why he wanted, and there was a Kaaba. There were lots of things. And then he created the universe, because then he wanted Earth, and then he wanted the viceroy on Earth, and then everything happened with Adam, blah, blah, blah. So there were things created.
The viceroy came after the incident in heaven.
Well, let's keep in mind that according to Islam, the Earth itself existed before creation, because what Muslims try to interpret the Big Bang as is that there was creation. And then what actually happened is that the earth was split from paradise.
Exactly.
But no, so, they're quite happy to accept that and I say big inverted commas, that accurately represents the inflationary model of the of cosmology. And I've got a video that hasn't gone up yet, where somebody attempted to argue this. And so he's basically saying that yes, the earth itself didn't exist at the time of the Big Bang. But so he had two sort of muddled arguments. One was that it's kind of allegorical. In other words, it was for the time of those people, so they could understand, quote, the Big Bang theory. But the other,
that's a stupid thing to say.
Well, yeah, that's one way. And then the other way is obviously to do a reductionist argument, basically saying, well, what's the universe consist of? And it's particles. Is the Earth consist of particles? And does everything else consist of particles? So if you reduce it down to its constituent components, then you can say that the earths and the heavens were split asunder. But by that logic, you could then say Adam was born at the time of creation as well, because all of his constituent components would have also been done. So, they're trying to use a reductionist argument to say this fits with inflationary model.
I think you're falling into a trap. This kind of relates to what I said when we spoke on the show 2 weeks ago. I said that they tried to basically use these vague deistic arguments, and then they'll slip in theistic claims. I mean, just for an example, a while ago, someone challenged me to come up with some arguments against the Quran. So I gave some arguments, and they were trying to get out of it. And I just used what the Quran said. I didn't go in for all the bullshit. And they tried to do these very deistic things, and I'm just like, okay, well. What was it I said? I can't remember exactly what I said, but I mentioned some claim that the Quran says. And then I said, but there's absolutely no evidence for it at all. So what are your thoughts? Then they said, well, obviously there's no evidence for it. It was thousands of years ago. Okay, so if you're happy to if you're happy to agree that there's no evidence for Quranic claims or Islamic claims, and therefore no reason to believe them, then what's the point of this challenge? Now, the universe, if you think of molecules and things like that, okay. So when the Great Flood happened, all that water, where did it go? No. See, if you think of the universe like this mobile phone, right? No. Let's say I accept God. Okay, Islam, Allah. Do you and then he's tried to make out this thing with like what was it I said? I mentioned that I can't remember what exactly I said, but it was something about how you know, there was a bit of land because a bird took a twig back, and then they tried to claim that, oh, well, actually it was just a local flood. Okay, a local flood where the Quran says that there was no land whatsoever, the tops of mountains were covered, that was just local. Yeah. Okay, so you do realize that the water pressure from that would have basically carved out the Middle Eastern equivalent of the Grand Canyon. So what? I mean, is Allah desperately doing everything he can to hide all evidence that this happened so we don't believe in him? And okay, no. See, when the universe first began, don't give a shit. So what do you think about the idea that the Hadiths say that not only was there an Adam and Eve, but they were 90-foot giants made out of clay, when all records show that humans were actually smaller and got older? So I don't let them out of it. They're trying to say to me, Islam specifically, Allah specifically, is true. I'm not letting them wiggle out of it. I'm not going to go on about molecules and this and that. This is what Islam says. Let's stick with this. Don't bullshit me.
So, sorry, what was I doing? What sort of trap was I falling into, or how would you respond to the... this wasn't the conversation today, but you did mention it there. How would you respond to the heavens and the earth being split asunder if they try and give you the reductionist argument of, well, if we reduce it down to particles, then we can say that, in fact, it all happened from the Big Bang?
Okay, well, if you want to say that, then you can't say to me that a phone can't create itself. Because using that exact same argument, if we're all particles, then in the larger picture of itself, everything in the universe is made from the universe. So the same particles that exist in me exist in a phone. So in a very broad sense, that phone created itself.
Yeah, which is kind of my argument for Adam. I'm basically saying, hey, well, then if we use your logic of reduction, reductionist argument of particles, then I can say that Adam was created at the moment of the universe, which the Muslim, this was not this week, but last week, he kind of accepted. And the moment I said, oh, well, then we have to change the Quran's verse. No. Then he backtracked and said, no, we don't have to change that. And then tried to explain why, Go ahead,
Rob. I think, Rob, you fall into the trap because you let the discussion about science to mix up science with religion at all. I think you shouldn't be allowed. You should not allow them to go there, because then they're trying to cherry pick just really small parts and fragments of the Quran and look like it somehow is today confirmed by science at all. So you have to stop it. So we're like that. I mean, if you want to talk either science, it is fun, it is informative, etc., or you talk about the religion. And in the case of Islam, I think you have to consider the talking about the core of Islam, meaning the Quran. And then you can say, well, like starting like that, what was it created first, the earth or the heavens? Because in Surah 2:29, you have the earth created first. And then in the context of...
Even though you got some part of the Quran that say it existed from the start and was split apart from heaven, you've got another part of the Quran saying that the earth decided to form itself from smoke.
Yeah, that's the point. Go in the Quran. You have to try to memorize parts of the Quran to react fastly. And on the other side, you have the heavens firstly created in Surah 79 from verse 27 to 30 in the context. And if you see the whole context in the end, if you have memorized more or less the whole context of the Quran, you see that science has no place at all, because nothing makes sense. Just small fragments in some vague forms you can interpret like it is scientific accurate also. But if you go into the scientific field and let you deceive yourself by them to trying to make it look like something special, you probably never will get serious answer by them. That is my point.
one of the things that annoys me is when they have this argument that, oh, it was written so people at the time could understand it. I mean, if you go back way even before that, you go to like ancient Greece, ancient China, you know, people, the things that they discovered and realized were incredible. They realized that the moon was a dead rock, and it didn't have light itself. It was reflected from the sun. They realized that the earth was round. I mean, there was I can't remember his name, but there was a Greek scientist who actually calculated the distance from the earth to the sun. What you're basically saying, not you, but you know, generally these people that make these arguments, what they're basically saying is humans back then were all retards. That's not true. I mean, if you explained it to them if you explained it to them in a way they could understand, they would understand it. How do I know that? Because we understand it, and we're the same species. And if they try to say that, you know, oh, such and such, okay, then why is it that like 3,000 years before that they realized all these incredible things and they actually got it? The argument that, oh, well, it was for it just falls apart.
Well, I'm just looking at the stream. It's horrific. It's breaking up like crazy. It's like 2 minutes behind us by now. It's really terrible.
Oh, you mean the live part itself?
Yes. It's horrific. I can see it now because it's simply giving you 1 or 2 seconds and then it stops for 10 seconds. I don't know what Google is doing. They must have changed something again.
No,
One thing that is very important to note here, if you look at science, if you look at mountains, for example, we have the earthquake in Italy right at this moment. Yet the Quran says where the mountains are, this is where the earth is stable. So we can see that this is absolute nonsense.
Yeah, you see, I'm not that versed in the Quran as some of you guys are. So I'm purely listening to what's being said and then arguing either from a scientific or philosophical point of view. I'm not yet at the point where I can quote the verses off the top of my head. So obviously I have to take a different approach because I can't do it that way at this stage by showing the different verses and showing how there's contradictions, etc. So I'm just listening to the claims and then going, okay, does this make sense? Is this plausible? Is this coherent, etc.? And then questioning it in that form. It's a shame I don't have an earplug in or something. And I was doing a live stream and you could say things in my ear.
I was just going to say, it's a pity we're not in the 21st century because then we could have a live stream and we could then talk to you and give you advice.
Yeah. I was going to test it with Periscope, but I didn't get round to it. It gets dark now very quickly as well. And so there's going to be a lot less time spent there. I mean, people stand around in the dark, but you can't film anything. Well, you can, but you just won't see anything. It's, you know, there's a few street lamps, but they're not very bright.
If you're interested, I can add you on Skype, and if there's any like specific questions, or if you want some pointers in you know, why the Quran is bullshit, I could you know, easy enough.
Yeah, it'd be very useful to have some contradictions and the backstory, because no doubt the clever Muslims will know all of the so-called contradictions in their view, and so they will have a response to it. So I can give them what I think is or what you guys say is a contradiction. What I also need is the counterclaim and your counterclaim to that claim. Otherwise, I stand there and they give me a response and go, no, it's not a contradiction for X, Y, and Z reason. Now, if it's incoherent, I can challenge it on that point. But if they bring in something else that I don't have knowledge of, well, then I don't have a basis on which to challenge their counter to the claim that I've made that it's incoherent.
Or if you don't have the knowledge, then just say, I'm not knowledgeable about this. This is what I am knowledgeable about. This is what I can talk about.
Yeah,
no,
so
I always say let them make the claim. In other words, let them tell you where in the Quran it says that.
Yes, that's what I typically do at the moment, and particularly with the scientific claims. And I want them to go to it and then read it out to me, and then let's evaluate this. You know, well, I'm obviously evaluating from a skeptical point of view with no other baggage attached, and just listening to it.
That was my point. That is probably not a good idea, because you let them cherry pick and just pick a little small fragments. So you have just to educate yourself. I would suggest just look on YouTube, type in Quran contradiction, just gather verses and read it and note these parts. You're certain you can verify on similar sources on many versions or translations of the Quran, so that you can just note the things you want probably talk about, etc.
I would also encourage.
Point.
I would also encourage that you check out. Are you aware of CEMB?
CMB.
CEMB.
CEMB,
The Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain.
There is a wealth of knowledge there. I mean, because a lot of these people are fluent Arabic speakers. They've lived decades of their lives as Muslims. They've been sheikhs. They've led prayers. They've actually, they've been to Saudi. They've walked in the path of the Prophet, and these are some of the CEMB probably has the largest stockpile of not only Islamic knowledge but counter-Islamic knowledge probably on the planet. I seriously doubt there is anywhere you will get more information.
Is that x-muslim.org.uk?
It's councilofexmuslims.com. If you know what, I will get you a link right now.
Cool.
It's an organization which helps ex-Muslims to find their feet and to have a place where they can go and discuss what it is that they're going through.
That's the link. And there's a load of different subforms. I mean, some of it is for lounge, some of it's just like general chat. If you look at they've got one section. It's just CEMB Twitter blogs, which has a wealth of stuff. But if you go scroll down a bit, there's ex-Muslim blogs and bios, there's musers of science, philosophy, religion, and gods. And then there's there's different subsections about like men in Islam, women in Islam, Islamic studies, Quran studies, arguments against the Quran, refutations against popular, dawah, Islamic claims.
Great.
There's a shitload of there.
I'll definitely look into that.
And in fact, there's some posts that I've made on that site, and that some other people have that I really should point out to you. I can still add you on Skype. I can do it now. I don't know if you want to wait till we're off air because you don't want to give that information, or you could just type it. Or if you, sorry.
Yeah, let me do it off air then. I've got your details here by the look of it. Raven Lovecraft. Yeah. Let me do that off.
Okay, well, stop. Is that okay? If you just when we go to off there, and I'll just
sure. No, I want to stop anyway because I can see the stream is no longer working at all.
Okay, cool. No worries.
Oh, I had two other points I wanted to bring up.
You just did. Okay.
Well, no, one of them is.
Do it.
Well, one of them is in Britain now. There's a record number of children being taken away from their parents because of fears that the parents are jihadi sympathizers. And there's also that members of the SAS are getting so terrified about being accused for war crimes by these ambulance-chasing lawyers who mentioned previously that they're actually being left behind and it's being done for the Yanks.
Are they being chucked under the bus, though?
Yeah. I think the one I'm most interested in is this one with children being taken away. It's just UK families have had children taken into care over fears that they were being radicalized.
Oh wow! Okay, is that good or bad? I don't know. I can't make up my mind.
I mean, I could always save it for next week.
I think it's worth it. I think it's worth mentioning, and I think it's something that maybe we should discuss. It's just a pity because I can see the stream is locked. It's just sitting still with you something that you said half an hour ago.
Well, when people actually view it after after the show's ended, I mean, it'll play normal, right?
I don't know. I've never had a situation like this before.
Yeah, it is mostly here recorded in the Hangout. We could talk normally, and this is recorded on the Google servers. So,
but then I won't be able to download it for another 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, probably. It's Sunday. That's not the first time it happens. It happens often, and that's why I so often are online. When I am in the Hangout of the Jinn&Tonic, it's mostly probably because it's Sunday evening and the stream is just shit.
Thank you, Google. Okay, guys, then I'm going to do, because now Thunderous have left, he was offering to give us the Hadith of the week, but he's not there anymore, so I will have to do that. I chose Bukhari Volume 1, Book 4, and it's Hadith number 148, and it's by Aisha. The wives of the Prophet used to go to Al-Manasi. What is Al-Manasi, you ask? It's a vast open place in Medina